In recent weeks, we've focused on heads and stylized heads and the basics of getting into Forger. So this week we'll take a look at making other body parts. So we'll focus on the hand and the fingers and how to basically make a template that you can use for all different hand shapes. So we'll start off with basic primitives, and then we'll string those together and look at the dimensions of the hand and look at how the joints are all put together. And then we'll put that into one model, remesh it, and then sculpt it up to a full hand. And then I'll do a little bit of a time lapse for the painting, because we don't really want to focus on that in this video, but it would be nice to see the hand painted up a little bit before we export it. So dive right in, take a look at how to make a hand in Forger. So let's dive right into hands then. So the first thing that you need to do is get some reference, and we've provided some for you. So if you go into resources, I'm going to give you two images. I'm going to drag them in and show you what they are. So we've got this one and we've got this one, and we're making them available to you, so you can find a link to those down below. Now, both of these images, it doesn't matter which one you use. One is just a lighter version of the other one, so it's less intrusive. So basically what we've got to work with is just some images of hands at the bottom. I'll just go to the darker one for now, just to give you an idea of a breakdown of the hand. It's not an in-depth anatomical study. This is more about how you could approach making a hand for the first time. So I'm not going to start using the names of the muscles or the bones specifically. I'm just trying to give you an idea of how you could try approaching a hand for the first time. So what would help us is if you like this kind of content and you are enjoying the video series that we're doing, if there's anything you specifically want us to focus on, then drop it in the comment down below and let us know what area you'd like to focus on. We've done a lot about stylized characters and a lot about heads, and now we're moving on to the body with things like the hands. So what would you like to see next focused on? And if that is something that is working for you and you're enjoying what we do, then consider just hitting the subscribe button for me, so that we can let you know when we're making the next videos, and we can if you hit the notification bell, we can alert you as we drop the next content. And if this video is something that you're enjoying, then please give it a like, and that helps us along the way. So these assets are available to you, and I've got some photographs of hands with light coming through them, what we call subsurface scattering, that I'm going to share as well. So that'll be in the same pack along with the model that we make today. So you're getting a good chunk of things to play with to do this piece of modeling. So let's move on to making it then. So what we're going to have to do is create the hand, and we're going to use very basic primitives. There's enough of a reference there for us to work over, and we're going to make it bit by bit with the joints. So let's just start with going back to the main menu, and we'll pick something like, let's pick something default. So we would want something like, skip the save, so let's have a look at what we want. So I'm going to start off with a cube, and the reason I'm starting with a cube, obviously I've just lost our reference. Let's bring that back in. So we're starting with a very clear idea of what we're going to end up with. So I'm going to start with this part of the hand, this being the palm of the hand, and I'm going to make some basic shapes first of all, and then I'm going to show you how we put them together. So we're looking at this being the literally the palm area. So it is quite square, but let's just adjust it and see what we want to do. So if you scroll down on your toolbar and you find all the way down to the bottom, I mean, unless I've moved it, actually, I think I might have moved it to the top. Yeah, obviously you can move all of these icons around. So I've now got the ability to manipulate the model, and I want to use not the first one or the rotate, I want this one, which is scale. And on the scale, we want to scale it down to flatten the hand, to make the palm of the hand. Now, one thing just to be really clear is if you go in here and put on the grid, then you'll know, let's do the hand vertically so we always know where we are. So we'll move it onto the ground plane and we'll work with it like so. So that's going to be roughly our hand volume there. So that's going to be the palm going down into the wrist. Now what we could do straight away is we could duplicate that. Let's go back up here. And if you look at, let's get into the right layer, objects. At the moment we've just got a cube. So we could just go along here. In fact, it's not there, sorry. Cube, strike across, duplicate, drag that one down, scale that one down, scale it up. You're just using the manipulator, see? And that would be our wrist. So we can thicken that up, like so. And that would be our wrist. So straight away, we've got some volume laid out with just those cubes. So that really does help us just to get things going. Now, bear in mind, if you look at the image here at the bottom, you can see the picture of the hand on the side. There's a lot more volume at the bottom of the hand where the fatty parts of the thumb and the other side of the hand are. So we will want more volume than that. And we can do that just by pulling it around. So I'm going to put it back into the middle of the screen. And then I'm going to go back onto the first bit. I won't name the parts yet. And then we'll just use the move tool. And what we'll do is, let's just come up here. And then we'll pull it around with it, changing the brush size as you're used to doing by now. And we'll just put more volume in the back. If you notice, the symmetry's on at the moment, but that will be going very, very quickly. And that will be fine. So we will have our thumb, I'm just trying to work out the reference, so we'll have our thumb as this one is behind it here on the right. So we're basically working over this one. Therefore, this is going to be our thumb on this side, on the left-hand side now. So now we already know we can pull out, turn symmetry off, top right, turn the little icon off, and let's just pull out the first indication of where our thumb is going to be, like so. Now remember, it's quite a fatty area, so it needs to be top and bottom. Don't worry that it's blocky or anything like that. All we're trying to do is just get some representation of the kind of volumes we're going to need. So just using the move tool is enough for now, like so. Now, in the middle, if you look at a lot of these hands, it shows you these dotted lines here and here. And with those dotted lines, it's an indication of where the knuckles, the base of the fingers are. So straight away, we know we can just pull up the middle of that, like so. So we're just trying to match this one here. You can see there what I'm trying to do. So it goes up in the middle and down at the side. So that cube's become almost the shape of that reference underneath now. Let's have a look at it from the side. So it's still got quite a lot of volume. Let's just go on to the other cube, and with symmetry off now, we'll just pull up the wrist backwards and forwards until we've got it. You can see it building up nicely. Again, it's squared off, but don't worry about that at this stage because we're going to combine them all together with remesh in a moment and then work on that. So that's enough for now. For the first bit, so we'll take these two and we'll bottom right, you've got the two little arrows, that's the choose meshes to combine, select them both and remesh them. Now they're fully combined together now, and if you want to just prove that to yourself, look with the wireframe on and then go to something, we basically want to smooth it down now, so we'll pick the clay tool and we'll use just smooth it down like so. So they are combined as one object, as you can see, but what they're not is one merged object, and that's the big important difference there. So they're definitely combined. You can see that as I'm working on it. It's affecting both of the models, but they're all together in one model. So what we're going to do now is something I go on about all the time, which is if we go to mesh, we're going to do this, which is the remesh. And we'll leave it at the default of 64 and watch what happens on the screen. If you've not already seen this, go back to our older videos and learn the basics of how to do the basic modeling with remesh. Hit remesh and it averages out the mesh completely over the top. So now if we start smoothing it down around that joint that we've done, or around the joint where the wrist meets the hand, you can see that just smooths it down for us as one piece, and it's still got that volume of the palm there. So already you've made, oops, gone a little bit too far there. Already you've made a good chunk of the model without really spending any great amount of time on it. And again, we're not going to go higher with the remesh at this point. We're going to rough it out as we are. We'll stay on the, let's just go across, we'll stay on the clay tool, lower the intensity, and we'll just give a bit more here. And that's what we're looking for there. Is if you look on the image in the bottom right, you can see the fatty part, this bit here, the fatty part of the hand is this bit. And you can go and get more. Obviously, I'm only giving you a bit of reference here, so it would be good for you to go and get a bit of you know, a bit more reference really, so that you can, you know, you can see some of these volumes, and you can match a realistic hand a lot closer. And that's why I gave the images at the bottom just as a quick guide. But there's plenty more you can go and get on, obviously, online. Just smooth that down a bit more. Turn off the wireframe. And there we go. So what I will do is, at this point, I'm going to save it so that you can have this model as well. So we'll just do a save as. We're going to call it hand_001, and that you can have that model as well. So what do we do next? So we've got the block out of the hand, and we're quite on, you know, as much as, in fact, we have gone a little bit off. So let's just get that volume back there. Don't worry about the bottom of the wrist, that doesn't matter. But you should almost start feeling that you've got the block out in a position where you're happy to sculpt on it. Bear in mind, this is just the block out. We're not looking at the sculpting yet or any detailing. And this video won't get you much down the line of the detailing. This is more about how we approach the initial build. You can see I'm just doing what we call noodling now, which is just, as I'm talking to you, I'm already just seeing an area and thinking, oh, I want to change that a little bit. If you're not sure what my hands are doing, and you're not sure about how to use some of these icons on and how to do any of this, then go back to our older videos. There's some links for you there to have a look at how to do some of that stuff. Okay. So I'm quite happy that we've got a blocked out hand now. So what do we do next? So let's think about fingers next. So the length of a finger is driven by the kind of space between the bones. So if you, I'll just use our hand as an indicator. So if you look at the hand here, and you look at these long bones here, they end just before where the fingers poke out of the palm. So the joint for each one is embedded inside the hand. So that's when it starts. And then everything then, so the first bone and the second bone and the third bone of the fingers, not the thumb, because there's only two after this joint. The first one is twice as long as the second one, and the second one is twice as long as the third one. So that you can see that up here more, certainly in this image here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make cylinders for the joints, and then just cubes for the middle bit until we've made a one basic finger. And then we're going to duplicate that, and then I add them in. So let's just make one first of all. So how do we do that? So we'll go back to our objects. We can name this one now. We'll just call it palm for now. That will change, but that'll start us off. And then we go to add some more models now. So let's just get him out of the way. So let's add in, first of all, we'll add a cylinder. Looks huge, doesn't it? So we'll just shrink that down. We know how to do that, so go to transform, and we want scale it down. And we'll just move that up out of the way for now. We don't want it in that orientation, but it'll do for now. And then we need to add should we use a cylinder or should we use a cube? No, let's keep it on a cube. And again, you want to shrink that down. Like so. And then move that up. So what I'm going to do now is effectively, if you look at the drawing at where I'm over the top of now, we're going to do that. We're going to make a cylinder, then a cube, then a cylinder, then a cube, to make a finger up. So the first one I want to do is this one. Oh, get my pen working. I'm going to take the cylinder, I'm going to rotate it, so we're on that cylinder there now. And we're going to rotate it around. And then move it back into place. It's actually the wrong orientation this way as well. Doesn't matter about lining it up completely amazingly. We're going to do a finger that's off the angle anyway, but it's good to get one going first of all. So move it around. I'm just using all the normal move tools. It will be embedded down in there, but we're not going to do that yet. But we just know what size we're going to use because we've seen it up here. To make it a little bit easier, what you can do is this pivot point. At the moment, the pivot point is on the left and the model is on the right. So if you need to change that, go into Tool and just do Center Selection. What that does is it brings the pivot point to the center of that model. So now if you're rotating, it's on the center of the model that you're working on. So that might make things a little bit easier. So we've got the first one done. Let's just make sure. So we're going to use this reference at the top now for a moment. And we're going to make we'll make the middle finger for just to make things easy rather than just doing one that's angled. At least that one's straight up at the moment. So what we can do is just line it up a little bit, and that looks fine. So we would really want that this joint to be, as I've already said, lower in here, but at the moment we're not too worried about that. So let's make the finger. Let's move this up a little tiny bit, rotate it again. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. And then adjust this one to the right scale. So again, we can do what we did before. We can go Tool, Center Selection on the cube, and then so we're making this first joint and the first bone effectively. And we'll scale that up. And we'll make it a little bit wider. And a little bit taller. So that's our first one. So the first joint and the first, so let's call it the knuckle, which is the cylinder is actually the knuckle. And then you've got, this would be, so let's make that way. And we will actually make it a little bit taller like that. So, and I've only done that so that you can see it sticking out a bit more. And then this one, the cube, which is the long extension of the bone, we will bring that up as well a little bit, and like so. There you go. So if you want to just check it from lining it up, it's going to be, we'll move it to the side a little bit so you can see. So it's got to be as long as from here to here. So maybe a little tiny bit longer, and that'll do now. That'll be perfect for our first joint. So we'll go 2 little arrows at the bottom, and we've got our palm, but we want the cylinder and the cube. We want to merge them together, and that will be fine. So now we need something that's half that size. So we'll move that down into its correct position now. So we'll go move that down roughly there. If you feel it's not deep enough, then by all means just make it a little bit deeper like so. And now the next one, the joint, so that's virtually in place now. Let's try it on this one just to make sure we feel like it is. Maybe a little bit too, no, it's spot on, it's the right extension there completely. So now we'll take the next one. So we've got this first one, and we'll just rename this for now. So I'm just going to literally call it I for index, and this is the third, just for my own benefit. I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to, let's move this along. There we go. And now we can, so obviously we want this to be half the size. So there's a couple of ways we can do it. The easiest way is just to pull it back with the brush. We could have shortened it before we did it, but I'm absolutely fine with it as it is. And we'll, not only will we shorten it, what we'll do is we'll lose a bit of the height as well, so that means it's tapering as it comes towards the end. So that one's looking fine. So all we have to do is duplicate it again, and we've got all three of them, like so. So we've got I3, and we've got I4. Let's just move the lower end bit in, just making sure that everything is lined up. There we go. So 1, 2, and then so 3. Actually, that should be 2. And then duplicate that. It'll rename it incorrectly, but we'll rename that index 1. Just again, it's just to help us really. And then this should be half again that. So we'll go back to the transform tool, and then onto the move. Looks like obviously the pivot is off. So remember what we did: tool, center to selection, then move it up. And we can actually scale the whole thing down because this is a much smaller knuckle overall, like so, and this needs to be half the length of that one. Now what we can do with this one is, because this is going to be the end finger, the end of the finger, we can just use that move tool and we can just shape it a tiny bit more. Remember, I've got no symmetry on here at all. So what we'll do is effectively where the fingernail is going to be sculpted would be there on the end. So this here is the rounded end of the end of the finger. So it you know, you could actually do some sculpting at this point, but I don't want us to. I just want to focus on the shape of the hand. Sorry, of the finger. Okay, so now you've got effectively one finger done. Now I'm just going to turn them a little tiny bit, simply because what I want to do is, you'll see as I do it, I want that one bent a tiny bit but then moved down, which would mean it'd be up a little bit, and then I want the next one, if you remember it was under objects, it was 2, like so. Just reset your pivot, rotate this one, like so. Remember the lengths of them. Back to number 1. Rotate it. Move it back into position. And what I will do is, I'll just go back. I'm just looking at the reference a little bit. I need a bit more volume in that finger. Like so. There we go. So you've got now a rough block out of a single finger. It does look a little bit too long to me there, so I might just, as I'm looking at the reference, if you're thinking of it like so, it seems like it's gone a little bit too high. So I will just scale this down a tiny bit and scale this one down a tiny bit. Not on that dimension, on this one. That's because I wasn't massively aware of the scale as I was working, so that's my own fault. Okay, so I'm going to save it at this point, and then I'll give you this model as well. So we want to save as. .002, so you can have that as a reference. And now because we've saved it, I'm going to be able to just merge these together and duplicate them. So we'll do, first of all, objects, we will say merge the two arrows, and we want to do 1, 2, and 3, merge them. And there we go, we've got one combined there now. So from this point, what we'll do is reduce it a tiny bit, and then using maybe this layout, let's just do some duplicating and some moving. So we can rename this now just to index. Duplicate it. I'm going to call it first, I can't remember if it's forefinger or. And then we'll move it around. We'll move it. First one here. Rotate that a tiny bit. Might be better now actually if I come closer. You'll see from this angle now, you might see it better from here. So my first one, I'm going to have to name it correctly now. So now we've moved it from that center. So that's our index. The second one, oops, done it wrong again. So that's our index. So that means that's our middle. You wouldn't think naming fingers was so complicated. Rename index. So from the middle we go duplicate. And then scale it down, rotate it forward, get it in position. I'm just angling them forward so it's a very basic position, but now it obviously, now start looking at your reference because obviously the fingers angle quite a lot from that point. So now the dotted line that I've drawn everywhere is quite crucial now. So embed it right down so you can see the knuckle is embedded there. Even if that square's coming out the back, don't worry because when we remesh it, it will be fine. So this one now is ring finger. It's about there. So index is right, middle is right. And just aligning the knuckles so that they're embedded, firmly embedded in the hand. That's the important bit. I will just use the move tool there just to embed that bit. And the last one, so I'm angling that right round to get some curl in the hand. And then from ring, we'll duplicate that, transform, move, tool, center the selection, rotate it around. These are all things that you should be getting quite familiar with now. Scale it a tiny bit because we're on to the last finger, the pinky. There we go. And that gives us the one right at the end. Can actually put a bit more of a curve in that one. Now, if you want to pose this and you want to keep it, I mean, I won't change for the model that we're working with here. I'll save it in this format so that it's got all the individual fingers. Because what we'll do now is we'll just quickly do a thumb, and then you've got them all in this format before we merge them all together. So it can be quite useful. if it's in this, you know, because we can do some posing with it even in this rudimentary form, really. Just moving the hand now, we've got it all in place. Just to give us a bit more volume even before we start. Okay, so now the final one is obviously the thumb, which is going to be slightly different because there's only really two bones in there from beyond this point. So we'll do it from scratch. So let's add a cylinder. Let's do it one more time so that we can really embed how we're doing this. So let's add cylinder. Let's make sure the pivot is, I'll do it quickest because we know how to do all this now. Let's get it on transform. Center the selection, scale it down. Rotate it. And the thumb's a slightly different angle. If you look at the reference of my references down below, you can see the thumb's off at a tiny different angle. It doesn't match the way the fingers are. Okay, scale that down. There are plenty of anatomy videos that will go through the bones. I would suggest that if this is something you want to take up, take a little bit further, that you go and do work through a couple of videos about the anatomy of the hand, because it's quite a complex part of the anatomy, really. Okay, objects. So the cylinder, we're going to duplicate it. Ready. And then scale it down. And then we're going to want one of those cubes, aren't we? So add cube, beyond the cube, tool, center selection, scale it down. See how it gets faster once you get used to it. It's not so bad. Bring it to where we want it. Keep scaling it if needed. Actually, the thumb angle's a bit more forward than that. If you look at your reference, there's obviously a large bend in it from here. And let's scale it that way. Move that joint forward. And then the final one is just a duplicate of that cube. We'll just bring that forward, rotate it around, and then we've got one of everything then. And we can start having a bit of fun with it. So scale it down, move it up, and there you go. So you've now got one of every part of the hand. And again, as I've said, I'm going to give you this one I'm going to save it again in a moment, and then you've got all of these different parts to play with. So if you're not so sure about getting to this point, you could open these models and really have a go of them before you ever get, before you have to do it yourself. It's, sometimes it is quite good to have a play with these things with it already done. And then you can, from there you can learn. So I'd encourage you to fight through and do it like I've done it. Certainly if it's your first time. But if you don't want to, people work differently. So it might be that you want to just download the hands and just have a go of them. So by all means, the models are going to be there for you to play with the reference art. So there you go. Let me save that now. And then we're on to the final part, which is meshing it and sculpting on it. So I think this one was 03. So that's 3 versions you've got there. Okay, the final part for this section, we can merge it all together now. So let's just literally merge every single part. Select everything, merge it together. And then we can just start some sculpting. Before we do that, let's just have a look at, for example, the materials. We could actually change the material to more of a skin colour. It just helps you as you're sculpting, I suppose. And we'll change what's called a specular to a bit more of a pinky colour. Let's just see what looks good. There we go. So it's at least it looks like a hand. It looks like a, you know, skin-ish sort of colour. A bit darker for me would be better, I think. It might show up better on the screen. Okay. There we go. And then what we'll do is start our lovely remeshing job. So it's all in one. And then basically we come up to mesh, and we'll do a remesh, but we'll knock it up to over 100. And we'll just have a look what that looks like with the wireframe on. There you go. So it's not hugely, this isn't what we call too dense. I'll do it again there because I saw a little bump for some reason. A little bit higher. There we go. That'll do it now. So now we can sculpt on that for now. So turn the wireframe off. And all the way through this, I might be remeshing, so I'll try and mention it as I do it. And again, I will go slightly higher each time I remesh. So let's do some smoothing first of all. So we'll smooth down some of these parts. So go to start with the clay tool, a smaller brush, and we'll just knock off some of these corners. There we go. And because you've got one of everything in the hand, even though it doesn't look it doesn't look correct yet, at least everything is in the right place. So as you start sculpting now, this is, let's call this your armature. Because now you can literally use this to start the ball rolling. So low brush size. Get yourself some hand reference. I've given you about 4 or 5 different packs of subsurface scattering, which is when you see light coming through your skin. I've given you those, so they're a good start if you don't have any. This is the back of the hand, and obviously going through to the thumb. And I'm as many strokes as I'm doing for the sculpting, I'm then going back and doing this virtually the same amount with smooth. So build it up, build it up, build it up, smooth it, smooth it, smooth it, and that's pretty much what I'm doing the whole time here. We won't do any of the creases yet. We'll do that in a few minutes. Just get some of the volume in there and smooth off all of these square edges. Really, you can see here how it just looks far too square. So I'm going around just basically either adding volume or taking volume away. So you can see I'm rounding the ends of the fingers, rounding the knuckles. It's not complex work this, but what is good at this point is if you start using reference. So get yourself those pictures out and start looking at where the fatty pads are, like here. Start thinking about where the creases are gonna go. There's a hands are made up of muscles up until the point where the fingers begin. So realistically, what you're looking for is this is a big teardrop muscle here, and this is a big teardrop muscle here, and that's what defines the hand. And if you look up hand anatomy, you'll see what I mean. That there's plenty of different things defining these shapes, whether it be the bone underneath, so you can see, on your knuckle, basically that is the bone coming through up here, and down onto your fingers themselves. That's basically just bone and tendon. And then back of the hand is muscle and fat and all sorts of stuff going on. All sorts of complexity going on there. So have a real good look at the reference, and make sure that it's embedded in your mind what these particular body parts look like. So you can see them building up quite nicely already. And if it's too square, I just take it away with the smooth. So I'm holding down the little wiggly line and just taking it away. I'm doing it really slowly. That thumb's not quite right, actually. The thumb's in the wrong position, which I hadn't noticed. So I'll do that. I'll correct that now with the move tool. So let's just bring that round a bit. You can see that I got the thumb wrong a little bit there. So it comes around. It's a great thing about digital sculpting, you can just correct it all as you're developing it. Still not happy with that thumb, so it might take a bit more work to come back to that. So we'll keep going on that. We'll put some creases in and then we'll fix that a bit more. Keep working around here. A bit wider on the fingers now. Be careful if you do any work that you know it's changing the position of the fingers, because you know for everything that you correct you could be doing a bit of damage. So just keep moving it around until you're confident that what you're doing isn't destroying anything. So it's looking not too bad. Now, one thing that we haven't done, and we should do, is we should work through with the flatten tool, low intensity, and just knock off any of this squareness for once and for all. Finish that blocky look needs to go now as we start adding in where the bones and the tendons are. That blobby look it really ruins the look of it. I'm really going to need a lot of work on this thumb. I think that's because I let it go. We should have fixed the position of the thumb before I moved on to this point, but we can live with that. The thumb almost should be angling up here, almost like see if I can correct it. Yeah, it's not too far out now. Okay, we'll look at that again. We'll keep going back to that one until I'm happy. A bit more smoothing. And now we'll just do some creasing. So we want some, let's have a look at where our creases go. So the start of the base of the finger, there's going to be one across the top of each one. That instantly makes it look better, doesn't it? And then every single joint, so there's one there, we'll line them all up. These are effectively on the cylinder that we put in. So this is now destroying the cylinder work, but the cylinder was really only ever a guide for us to know where this is. So this is working quite well as a guide because the cylinder's still there. It shows you where that joint is. And then when you inflate or if you sculpt over it, then it looks quite skeletal at the moment, doesn't it? So we you know that will go away once we do that bit. Okay, so now let's have a look at what's on the palm of the hand. So there's a few key creases in a hand. So we've got this one, and this one. So this big fold here. A few on the wrist. And let's have a look at the top. So there'll be a couple of creases on the back of the thumb. There will be a thumbnail. We need the opposite of that. We need volume there rather than taking it away, so I need to be a little bit careful. At this point, there's no harm in us doing, we could do a higher resolution and a remesh. Or if you feel like you're not going to remesh anymore, what you can do at this point is just subdivide it. But I'm happy with what we've just done. It's given us pretty much what we need. Now, on the knuckle here, each knuckle needs kind of these wrinkles here. Like so. Actually, I am going to subdivide it and just see if that gives me a much fine. Yeah, that's better. So I'll undo that. So I've gone quite high res there now. Let's just do that again. I check it before I do it. So wireframe on. Yep. So we're okay there. Subdivide. I was just checking I was at the right level then. And that's a good example of where you move from remeshing, or can move from remeshing to subdividing, because I was happy with everything. I just wanted to go higher res, but I'm not going to remesh again now. So just putting a bit of detail in, one of each around here for the fingernails, keep saying thumbnail, around here, one underneath, and then big creases in the thumb. So got a big crease under here, which will help us in a minute when I realign it. Then one here, and then the big one in here. There's a lot of creases in that thumb there. I'm just going to go back to the move tool. Probably go over the top now, but I'll bring it back. It still looks very square, this thumb. And this is where all of your time will come now, is getting this bit right. If it's taking you a great amount of time to get to this, this is still going to be your biggest chunk of time invested sculpting it correctly. And you may well not get it right on your first go. Hands are very complex things to get right, as I've proved already with, I got the thumb wrong early on, and it's affected me all the way down, as you can tell. But if you practice it and you start to understand how the bones are made up and how the muscles are made up, then you'll only get faster and better at it, obviously. So we don't need that second crease there. That's crept in from nowhere. Okay, so we've pretty much got one of everything. Everything from now is just refining it and tightening it down, and possibly painting it as well. But from our point of view as a video to create the hand, I think we're pretty much done now. Now what I will do is I'll just add a little bit of a time lapse of me working on this for another 10 minutes. And don't forget, if you want to see any more of this kind of content, you must hit subscribe for me, and basically like this video and hit that notification bell so we can let you know when the next videos are coming out. But thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the Forger series. There's a lot of new and exciting developments in the industry at the moment with mobile sculpting and mobile modeling. So, you know, Forger's just one of the ones that I'm really into at the moment, but I've got a lot more that I can share over the next few weeks. So just watch out for what they are, what's coming. I'm working with a couple at the moment. And thank you for joining, and if possible, just do me that little favor of adding us as a, you know, become a subscriber, and we can share more of these tips and tricks.